Okay, I'm going to start a new book today called World's Scariest Prisons. Introduction. Slammer, big house. Joint, clink. Prison, where criminals spend long days removed from society as punishment for their crimes. These are the prisons of today. In much of history, however, prisons served an altogether different purpose. Prisons and jails were places that held people awaiting either their trial or their execution. Locking someone up as punishment hadn't been thought of yet. Now the government pays to clothe and feed their prisoners. In the past, prisoners had to pay for their own food and bring their own clothing. If a prisoner didn't have money to pay for food, he either starved or was fed the smallest amount to keep him alive. When his clothes became tattered, he wore the rags or went naked. Prisons were often wet, dark, and terribly crowded. In the early 19th century, some scholars argued that the prison could be a punishment all on its own. They suggested that people who committed crimes might be capable of change. If they could be placed in a crime-free environment, perhaps they could reform themselves. Gradually, going to prison became an accepted punishment. This was the beginning of the modern prison system. The Roman Colosseum. The Roman Colosseum was a giant, magnificent arena that could hold 50,000 spectators. Underneath the arena were cells that held gladiators waiting to fight. Construction of the Colosseum began in the 1st century CE under the rule of Emperor Vespasian. Its grand design served a specific purpose. Vespasian wanted to express how powerful he was as a ruler. Hint, he was very powerful. Elaborate spectacles were staged there, such as reenactments of entire sea battles where the arena was filled with water and wooden warships. Yet much of what passed for entertainment in ancient Rome was truly gruesome. Criminals were publicly executed at the Colosseum. Slaves and criminals were sent into the arena to engage in battles to the death with wild animals. Behind the bars, also known as the Colosseum or Colosseum, the Flavian Amphitheater, located in Rome, Italy, operational AD CE until the 16th century. Number of prisoners, there were enough cells to hold the gladiators competing that day, as well as some wild animals, and space for an estimated 50,000 spectators. Notable inmates, famous gladiators like Flamma, Precius, and Verus. Battle time. The most notorious events were the battles of gladiators, which often ended in the death of one of the fighters. So much blood was spilled that the sand on the arena floor was dyed red to mask the gory sight. Some gladiators were volunteers who were free to come and go as they wanted. Other gladiators were prisoners or slaves. They were sent against their will to participate in the looted or public games and were trained in the gladiatorial arts in special schools. Life in prison. The gladiators were important to the owners who organized their fights, so they received the best diet, fitness training, and medical care available. From examining gladiator remains, scientists have been able to tell that the gladiators ate a lot of carbohydrates like barley, beans, and peas. This food was supposed to make the gladiator gain weight. A layer of fat would protect him from flesh wounds during the battle. And when gladiators survived their fights, their wounds were treated expertly. When it came time for their fights, the gladiators might travel through an underground passageway directly to the dungeons beneath the Colosseum, where they would be locked in cells alongside lions, tigers, bears, and elephants. There they waited to hear when and how they would fight and wondered whether they would leave the arena alive. After several hundred years of battles and games, the Colosseum fell into disrepair from fire, earthquakes, and looting. During medieval times, people planted vegetable gardens and dumped waste in the basement. Gradually, the dungeons under the Colosseum decayed. The Colosseum remained in that state until Benito Mussolini, the Prime Minister of Italy, ordered excavation in the 1930s. Today, the dungeons under the Colosseum are open again. Tourists come from near and far to walk those same stones, imagining perhaps the terrifying rumble of battles above. Gladiator battles. The word gladiator brings images of warriors entering arenas to great cheers. Famous gladiators were the celebrities of Roman society. Gladiator battles were very popular. All classes of Romans attended, with the nobility watching from a special box right near the action. To prepare to fight, a gladiator usually wore only a tunic or a loincloth held up by a metal belt. He might wear shin guards and a helmet made of bronze. The gladiator carried a large shield and a spear, lance, or sword. Some gladiators entered the arena on horseback and then dismounted to fight. Sometimes they would battle accompanied by music. If the loser of the fight was not killed during the battle, then the audience might decide his fate by giving a thumbs up sign, which meant he must be executed on the spot by the winner. The winner would receive prizes, a palm branch, money, and perhaps a wreath of laurel, which was a sign of honor. To complete the spectacle, the winning gladiator would run a lap around the arena, waving his palm branch. A gladiator might fight only 3 times a year and could expect to die either in battle or from his wounds by the age of about 27. This might seem very young, but the late 20s was the average life expectancy for most Roman people.